Hey guys, Dr. Morse, Injury Experts. Thank you for tuning in. We just finished week 9 where Joe Flacco couldn't do anything to save his life. I thought this offense was going to continue to improve, but man, that was ugly. We had another big day of several significant injuries, and we're going to walk through them right now. Obviously, there's one more game tomorrow night, but still a fair share of pretty big name injuries today, including 2 superstar wide receivers, a possible injury to a running back, and Dak Prescott dealing with a potential significant injury. So I'm just going to do these in order of how I traditionally do, which is running backs, wide receivers, then tight ends. So, the biggest quarterback news of the day is that Dak Prescott suffered likely 1, but probably 2 injuries. A significant hamstring strain, or potentially significant, so much so that he's at least going to miss a game, potentially up to a month, just depending on if this is mild or if this is closer to moderate. He's never had a hamstring strain injury that I can tell in his injury history that goes back over 10 years. With that being said, he might also have it looked like a right throwing hand injury, which may be even more important. His hand was really swollen based on zoomed in video. And you could see that, it was definitely super swollen, and that's pretty hard to do without a fracture. You can sprain the heck out of it, but usually it doesn't swell that much without a fracture. So, there could be a hammy and a possible hand injury going on here for the $60 million or whatever they paid him this year. So we'll have to see how that plays out. The other quarterback that got injured today was Caleb Williams. Now it sounds like it was like at the end of the game. It sounds like it was an ankle injury, but it doesn't sound overly concerning. Something to monitor, but not overly super concerning. The majority of the injuries today were to the wide receivers, but we did see a couple guys get possibly injured. Jonathan Taylor did possibly tweak his ankle. He ended up coming back into the game, but he missed several important rushes or plays that he likely would have been featured. So that tells me it was a little bit more than nothing. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Obviously, he missed several weeks with that high ankle sprain. So whether it's a re-injury to that ankle, a different part of the ankle, or the other ankle, we don't really know. But unfortunately, it did look like he injured that ankle. There were several wide receivers today that got injured to the point where 70% of my list is wide receivers. But the main one I want to talk about to start with is CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb landed pretty hard on the top of his, I think it was his right shoulder. And when we see that, this is traditionally the AC sprain, which is a combination of ligaments in this area. Now, we've seen some guys not miss any time and play in the next game. We've also seen guys miss 2 to 4 weeks if this is closer to a grade 2 than a grade 1, which is basically what Will Levis is dealing with. Now, CD has been able to stay very, very, very healthy in his career. So, hopefully this is a grade 1 or what we call a type 1, and he's able to play in week 10. He's probably not going to have Dak throwing to him, so they may have either Cooper Rush or Trey Lance, but he will obviously need to be healthy enough to play. If this is anything more than this, it's unlikely to be a clavicle fracture or a shoulder dislocation. Like, it just didn't fit the pattern of that. It's possible. It's less likely. And I wouldn't be surprised to get an MRI tomorrow and kind of go from there. A.J. Brown suffered a left knee injury. It could be a combination of things. If he got lucky, it's not a big deal. He just got a bone bruise. He's got a little knee sprain and he's a little swollen. He tried to come back, wasn't able to go. But based on the very limited video that I did see, the player hit the outside of his knee, allowing the inside of his knee to buckle, which is traditionally an MCL sprain. Now, this is what DK Metcalf is dealing with. He's basically just missed his second week, and I believe they have a bye next week. So that would allow him to potentially come back after. But with that being said, if this is anything more than a very, very, very mild one, he may miss a week or two. And this is after missing, a couple weeks already earlier. So it's just, he was set up for a monster game. He was my top play of the week, for betting. And it's an unfortunate because he would have smashed in this game. Devonta Smith had a great game as a result. The other guy that we need to talk about that was scary is Chris Olave. Now, he took a shot. He suffered his 5th concussion that I have on my record, and it may be more than that. Those are just the ones that I could find. But he got checked out, presumably at the hospital. Everything was fine. I think he went back to the locker room, and he ended up doing okay. There was a little trading on Twitter from the former Saints wide receiver Michael Thomas, and even from Olave's brother, I think his name is Josh, commented on it a little bit too. So interesting there. Something probably about ball placement and kind of how risky the throw was for Carr. Now, the last kind of big name wide receiver that I want to mention is Drake London, who landed really hard on his hip when he was in the end zone. And when you land hard on the hip like this, you usually bruise this area, which is what we call a hip pointer. If you look right here, there's the glute minimus and maximus all attached here. And these, if you land really hard, especially if you're kind of landing on them hard, these can be really painful. These can be very challenging to pick up and rotate your leg, which is obviously what you need to do to run and anything else. So he did not, hit his normal 5 to 6 catches, but I think he did get a touchdown, and they ended up winning, so it's not a big deal. But this, may linger for about a week. Most guys can come back in a week, but it's definitely something to monitor. If this is anything more, we see some guys miss a week. Darnell Mooney has been incredible. Bijan has been really, really good. Pitts didn't do a whole lot today, but he's been really good. And then Ray-Ray McCloud has actually looked pretty good. So they have a pretty deep offense. A couple other potential significant injuries. Keon Coleman with a possible wrist injury. I've heard fracture kind of commented out there. I haven't seen any specifics. He was wearing a brace, which is usually not a super good sign, but we'll have to keep an eye closer on that. Obviously, Amari Cooper missed this week due to an injury as well. Michael Pittman, you saw a buddy tape, what we call buddy tape, on his finger between the 3rd and 4th finger, which means one of these 2 fingers is injured, likely dislocated. They pop it back out and then just buddy tape it. Could have been a fracture, could have been a different type of sprain, but usually they're not a big deal per se, but definitely something to monitor going forward. Darius Slayton appeared to suffer a concussion. And then the probably the most significant news of the day is that Erick All Jr., the really impressive Cincinnati Bengals rookie tight end, unfortunately re-tore his right ACL that he tore last year in college. This is always the risk, although it's quite low, depending on which study you read, anywhere from 5 to 15% re-tear rate. Traditionally, these guys use either patellar tendons, quad tendons, sometimes they use hamstring tendons as the graft. Rarely, very, very, very rarely do they use cadaver tendons because they usually, they have a high re-tear rate. It's just an unfortunate injury. This is a tough injury to come back from, as we see as it is. Now you have to do it all over again. Tight end is usually a pretty slow learning curve. And usually guys do take a little bit of time. We've seen a couple guys the past couple of years do really well in their rookie year. But in general, this is a tough position to acclimate to. And now he's coming off back-to-back ACL tears. Just unfortunate, and allowed Gesicki to have an absolutely monster game, which is secondary to T. Higgins not playing. A couple other guys that left the game and came back, but worthy of at least mentioning in case it does come up again. Chase Brown left and came back, had a really good game. Secretary Zach Moss and his neck injury. Juwan Johnson with probably a concussion, but I'm not sure if he came back or not, so that he's maybe in the protocol. James Conner also got evaluated for a concussion, but he came back and had a great day. Jaylen Waddle suffered a lower leg injury. I believe it was on the right side. He was blocking one of the guys, kind of, landed on his ankle. It didn't look like anything significant. I believe he came back in the game and caught a touchdown, so I'm not overly worried, but something to at least think about, keep an eye on. And then Xavier Legette suffered a wrist or hand injury. He caught a touchdown. I believe he came back into the game, but something that potentially could be worthy of monitoring. So, a fair share of injuries today. We will obviously see probably a bunch more as they're added on Wednesday. But it's getting a little rough, and we have a fair share of teams on bye this week. Cleveland, Green Bay, Vegas, and who just fired Luke Getsy, and the Seattle Seahawks. So a ton of guys we have to account for in our upcoming lineups. Hope you like that type of content. If you are a follower, do me a favor and smash the thumbs up. If you're not a follower, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. If you're not following me on Twitter, it's probably the best source that I'm going to be on. That's at Dr. Jesse Morse. And, we try to do as much as we can during the week. We'll add some short videos. I'll do a deep dive on Wednesdays. But stay tuned. There's still, betting. There's still, hopefully you're still acclimated and rocking and rolling in your fantasy leagues. Best of luck. We will see you next Sunday night.